Welcome to the Briefing Room, a show by Warriors for Warriors. My name is Matt Bowman. I'm your host. And on this show, we interview the world's top leaders. We bring you top current events so that you know what's going on. This show is a place for you to get a checklist. Coming from naval aviation, we live and die by checklists. And this show gives you a checklist to life success and a checklist to what's going on in your world. So let's get at it. Around the world in 10 minutes. In the United States, the big issue right now is the government furlough. If you are furloughed as a federal employee, the best advice that I can give you is to go to opm.gov and stay tuned to that website. They have a list of actions. Who's furloughed? Who can check email? Who can't check email? There's so many things going on. A lot of families were really worried about this October 15th payday. I know that when I was on active duty, my wife and I lived payday to payday. But the good news for those 2 million active duty and veterans who are out there receiving payments is that your checks will come through. So there'll be no warfighter who misses a payment. I think that's great news for all Americans. The Congress is still out there negotiating and having discussions about when the government will reopen. But for those of you who are furloughed, there are opportunities. You need to consider all your options. Now is the time to figure out what to do. And on this show today, I'm going to interview one of America's top performance leaders, and he's going to talk about how do you excel in adversity? How do you thrive when your job and your livelihood and your family's bills are on the line? So that's what we're going to talk. The show is also about inspiration. So we'll have some inspirational leaders that will inspire young people to be the best that they can be and give them practical tips, not just thoughts, but practical tips on how to excel. These things come from years of being on battlefields, being in boardrooms, and creating million-dollar companies. So these tips make up the checklist. So Chicago, Memphis, Portland, what's going on there? Well, right now, federal courts have blocked troop activities in Chicago and Portland, but the governor has authorized troops to go into Memphis, Tennessee, and to participate in creating order in Memphis. So that is the latest about the troops, the National Guard movements, and what's going on there. Other things that are going on in the United States include the furlough activities. As I said earlier, monitor opm.gov for the latest information on furloughs. In South America, 6 more people were killed by U.S. strikes. They're Venezuelans. So the emphasis between the United States and Venezuela continues to stay at heightened tensions. So we're going to keep an eye on South America. Haiti is also in the news. The gangs in Haiti still have a stronghold on Port-au-Prince. So we got to keep an eye out on what's going on in Haiti and what's going on in Venezuela. In Europe, Secretary Hegseth said fireworks are on their way to Europe, to Ukraine, to help the Ukrainians in their war against the Russians. But what does that mean? We need to take a deeper look and to see, as veterans and as Americans, what does that mean for us? The Trump administration has signaled that it might be a European-led NATO. Since the end of World War II, we've had a US-led NATO. So the shift to a European-led NATO has huge strategic implications for all of us. So we need to stay tuned to that and keep a close eye on what's going on in Europe. In Asia, there is a white paper, and the Chinese are now focused on the island nations. Their strategic goal is to take over the Pacific nations, Papua New Guinea, Laos, Vietnam, all those countries that the United States has spent decades building relationships. But the United States is prepared and engaging with those countries, so we'll see how all that plays out. What does that mean for you as veterans? What does that mean for you as American STEM stakeholders? The world is an increasingly competitive place, whether it's in AI, whether it's in defense, and you have to be ready to compete in a global market. In the Middle East, Gaza has been a hotbed, 67,000 civilians killed, over 1,000 Israelis killed in October of last year, but it's finally come to a conclusion. The 20-point peace plan that President Trump has sent forward to establish peace in the Middle East has just started. It's off to a rocky start. Even this morning, there's been some gunfire, some more civilians killed. But our hope is that peace in the Middle East will hold. Let's go down to Africa. Africa has the world's fastest growing population, 30% of the world's resources. The strategic implications of what's going on in Africa are best exemplified by looking at Madagascar. Yesterday, an army colonel held a coup and took over the country of Madagascar. The coup was prompted by Gen Z college students, Gen Alpha, Gen Z high school and college students who staged protests in Madagascar against the country, against the government. And that is what precipitated the coup. Madagascar is a test case for why all of us need to keep a close eye on what's going on in Africa and what's going on with those young people as they transition from their teenage years into their adult years. So, from me, Matt Bowman, that is Around the World in 10 minutes. Right now, we're going to go to a commercial break so that you can hear more about waves of change, how you can participate in this conference if you're a furloughed worker, and find you your next opportunity.
What you put in to the system is what you get out. And you've often heard garbage in, garbage out. Well, an entire group of humans will have to interrogate the data in AI, or what we call training. You put the stuff in and you make sure that it is correct. AI does hallucinate. It fills in the gap. So where there is no knowledge, it will fill in that gap. And then it will remember. So bad data, bad answers continue to grow within the system. That is the power of asking the right questions and looking at a person as the whole and finding solutions, and not simply using it as a quick research tool, but actually using it as a way of augmenting to the brain and to the knowledge and to the specialty of experts.
This year, the tide is stronger than ever. For 30 years, we've been creating space for growth, innovation, and global competitiveness in STEM. From students and early career professionals to senior leaders and executives, this is where STEM changemakers gather. Join us in Baltimore for the 30th anniversary of the Waves of Change STEM Global Competitiveness Conference. 3 days of learning, networking, and shaping the future. October 23rd through the 25th, Baltimore, Maryland. Mark your calendar. Waves of Change, Oceans of Opportunity. More information at ccgmag.com/WOC.
The briefing room is not just a place where you come to get information. It's also where you come to get inspired. Today's guest is Captain Donnie Cochran. He is the very definition of inspiration. He is a Navy fighter pilot. He is the first African-American Blue Angel for the United States Navy, Fly Navy. He is the first African-American to be the commanding officer of the Blue Angels. He is my friend, Captain Donnie Cochran. Welcome to the show, Donnie.
Hey, Matt. Glad to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know that is one of your phrases. For those who aren't familiar, you know, Captain Cochran, we don't call him Captain Cochran. We don't call him Donnie. You know, we call him Big Time because that's how he does things in life. He does things in a big time way. And one of his catchphrases is glad to be here. So, Donnie, let's get right into this. For the audience, you know, we're going to go through your whole life and then we're going to talk about human performance. because part of this show, again, is not just information, but inspiring people to make big changes in their life and to overcome challenges and adversity, and to see fantastic Americans like you who are doing it and have done it. So I want you to tell me a story, Donnie, about your people, where you're from. What does it take to create a Donnie Cochran?
Well, first of all, I'm happy to be here with you and share some of the lessons learned from my journey. But I like to start by sharing my experience growing up. I think there were two areas that I think I would like to focus on. First is family values, and the second one is the farming experience. I believe from my early childhood, those laid the foundation for the success that I enjoy today. And what I mean by that is my family was composed of my mom and dad, and we had a total of 12 siblings. There were 9 boys and 3 girls. And from that dynamics of growing up in that family structure, we had a farm, and in the farm we had to work. And the good news for us is we own our farm, so a lot of the core values of hard work, honesty, teamwork, all of those core values that are necessary for success in a team environment, I learned while I was on the farm. And my heroes, by the way, was my mom and dad. For them to be successful in raising 12 young African-American young people, 9 boys and 3 girls, all of us graduated from high school. About 8 of us graduated from college. And I think about 7 of us joined the military. So when I look back at my family, I'm very, very fortunate that we grew up on a farm, and the fact that I had, parents that instilled those values that allowed me to go from the farm to flying with an organization like the Blue Angels.
Donnie, I'm gonna ask our producers to keep us both on here, because I could not help but jump in when you said that you had 12. Is that right? 12?
Yep. That's 12 of us, 9 boys and 3 girls.
All right. So then what are some of the lessons that you learned from having 12 people, 12 siblings? I mean, how does that work? Where do you fall in in the pecking order?
I was like number 5. And well, that structure, that's why I talk about structure, because the older kids within the family were responsible for the younger kids in terms of, for instance, we always had work to do. That one thing my dad did a lot of was he always had us busy doing something. Even during the school year, we had to, once school was out, we did chores, and then we did our homework. And so it was, so in fact, when I joined the Navy, I thought I was on vacation. I was like, okay, when is the work going to start? So for me,
Donnie, that early exposure, that early indoctrination to work, I think that's probably one of the key principles from this conversation that I'm going to put on the checklist at the end of the show is work matters. And people instilling your ability to work early, what a gift.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I learned also teamwork, because we always had to work as a team to get the job done before the sun got too hot, for instance. The other thing is you learn how to take care of the inexperienced brothers and sisters within the family, so that they can grow and develop as well. You learn motivation. I learned leadership by example. I had to get out and work just as hard as everybody else to be that example for them to follow. So those fundamental lessons learned, like I said earlier, are the lessons learned that have carried me throughout my life, not just the farm, but my career following leaving the farm.
How did it impact your life to have ownership of land? We talk about land ownership all the time. I think land ownership is one of the most important things an American can have.
Absolutely. We're very fortunate that my granddad, and that's the property that I'm currently fortunate enough to own right now. And that is, it's over 300 acres, and it is prime property in Southwest Georgia. And what I mean by that is, underneath the ground is what we call an aquifer, which is underground water. And in today's environment, you have to have irrigation because of the weather changes and the climate change, for instance. Uh, Typically, you get more water than you need when you don't need it, and other times you don't get it when you need it. So, but having irrigation allow you the flexibility of being competitive in growing your crop. So, I learned all of what I actually have an opportunity to do now from my early age of growing up on the farm. I had the fundamentals of how to work. Now I'm getting the strategic thinking in terms of how to hold on to the property to make it generational wealth for my kids and grandkids.
Wow. I mean, we could probably stay on this farm and this land ownership. But tell me also about your school, your early school days. I mean, what was it like? Were you in segregated schools, desegregated schools? What was it like?
We started off in Mitchell County Training School. This was an all-black school. You had elementary school, you had middle school, and you had high school, all within the same school. And in 1971, we integrated with Pelham High School, and that transition was relatively easy because I only had 1 year of school, and that was my senior year. And I played football. We didn't have a football team on at the black school, but when we integrated, we had a football team. And I was fortunate enough to play football for 1 year. I thought I was pretty good. You know, if I'd had 4 years, I probably wouldn't have been in the Navy. I probably went to the NFL like most kids think they could go.
It's great.
No, just kidding. I think my desire was to fly airplane, and I was very fortunate to be in a position to live my dream, you might say.
You know, Donnie, I was listening to, one of my heroes, Farmer John Boyd, and he was talking about exposure. So how did you get exposed from the farm in Southwest Georgia to flying airplanes? I mean, isn't that a leap?
It is a leap, but believe it or not, I was exposed to the flying on the farm. And what I mean by that, apparently where our farm is located, there was a low-level navigation route that overflew our farm. And so routinely, as we were working in the field, I would see Navy jets, Air Force, Army flying over the farm where we were working. And that was always inspiring to me to see these jets flying low, fast. And I had my big hat on like you, Matt, and I would look up and see them flying over. And I said, would I rather be down here or up there? And that was one thing that inspired me. The other thing was anything related to aviation sort of excited me, whether it was a crop duster or watching TV programs with airplanes. And you know what? When I had a chance to go fly an airplane, it was exactly the way I thought it would be. And so I knew there was a connection. And now the skills were, well, how do I go from the farm to pursuing my dream, which was to fly jets off of a carrier? For some reason, I wanted to do that. And we're very fortunate to do it. The very first time after I did it, I was like, man, what have I gotten myself into? But at that point, I was committed, and the rest is history.
And so you're sitting there as a farm boy looking up from the fields of Southwest Georgia. I don't know. I'm from South Carolina. I don't know what y'all grow in Southwest Georgia. I don't know whether it's peaches or pecans or cotton or soybeans or what. But you're seeing the airplanes turning and burning. How did you get to college? Where did you go to school at? Tell me about that.
You know, let me just share this with you. You say it's always important to remember that if you're an older sibling in your family, the younger ones are going to observe you. And that was the case for us. I had three brothers that went to Savannah State ahead of me. despite my desire to want to fly airplane, I did not prepare myself the way I should have to go to college, but I went to college anyway. And I went to Savannah State, and that's how I saw the opportunity to pursue aviation, because they had a naval ROTC unit at Savannah State. In fact, they've established 5 naval ROTC units at historically Black colleges to increase the number of minority officers within the Navy. And they had one at Savannah State, and I joined the ROTC program. My brother, who was ahead of me, he joined, and he came home during the summer, and he went on a midshipman cruise and to South America and was doing traveling. I hadn't been out of the state of Georgia yet, and that excited me as well. So I saw the opportunity to pursue flying through the Naval ROTC program.
So big time. You now have gone from a farm in Southwest Georgia to Savannah State. Shout out to HBCUs. I'm just coming off of the greatest homecoming on earth in Greensboro and heading to the other greatest homecoming on earth at Florida A&M this weekend. So that HBCU experience, we have, over 17 accredited HBCU, ABET accredited HBCU people who are listening. What would you say to students who are at HBCUs to inspire them to become like you, big time?
Okay, well, first of all, you have to, number one, have a sense of who you are. And a lot of people have struggled with this. I struggle with it as well, in terms of what it is you want to do. And there are some pillars of high performance that I think sort of lay the foundation. The first thing is seeking clarity of who you are. Discovering who you are is vitally important. What your strengths, what your limitations are. The next aspect of it is you have to have energy, generate energy. And how do you recover from stress? Because during your journey, you're going to encounter stress, and you have to have the ability to recover from it quickly and not let it bog you down or get depressed or whatever the issue you may be dealing with. The next aspect of it is raising necessity. You have to be able to get things done, your productivity, increase your productivity. You have to be able to influence people in order to get what you want. And you have to have the courage to take a chance on you. And that's one of the biggest things that I can say with my journey of applying for the Blue Angels. I had to get out of my own way. There were like 1,000 reasons why I should not have been a part of the Blues. And 990 of those reasons I came up with.
You came up with.
So John, I had to get out of my own way first.
You said 1,000 reasons, but I want to make sure that for the after show, we catalog your 5 reasons that you got, ending with number 5, which was courage.
Yes.
And 1, which is you have to believe in yourself, and that there will be people out there, whether you're a furloughed federal worker, whether you're in a job that people don't think you're qualified for. It doesn't matter what office in this country you're in, there's going to be somebody who don't think you qualified for it. And so right. Part of the message today is you are more than enough. Whoever you are, if you're listening to this conversation with me and big time Donnie Cochran, you are more than enough. So you need to hold your head up. No more of these 1954 doll experiments where people are picking dolls that don't look like them. However you look, tall, fat, skinny, black or white, you are more than enough. So I think, thank you for that, sir.
Well, Matt, let me add a comment, especially to those folks that are dealing with, furlough, the uncertainty. One of the quotes that I think is important to just keep tucked away. It's not going to change your feelings, but at least it'll help you in your journey. And that phrase is, "This too shall pass." Whether it is good or bad, it will pass. Now, while you're in the wilderness or dealing with what you're dealing with, that's not a time to feel sorry for yourself. That's the time to sort of engage and to sit down and prepare yourself to do those things, those personal development things that you've always wanted to do and didn't have time to do it. Well, now's the time to do those things, to get focused on, okay, the next chapter of your career. And that means, spending some time thinking through what you want to do.
Are you suggesting that furloughed workers should be? Are you suggesting that furloughed workers should be using this time to get ready?
Absolutely, because like I said, this too shall pass. And when it passes, you want to be ready for the opportunities that are going to present yourself, be presented to you. Some of those opportunities will be created as you're preparing yourself to go through the journey that you're going through. One of the things I learned on the Blues about innovation and creativity, and that was, as you were learning to be the very best you could be, that's when creativity and innovation starts. It's not when you get there, it's the journey that you're going through. And that's whenever you got to take those lessons learned, all of by the way, everything that I've learned from the farm school, none of it is wasted. You put everything you've learned to bring it to bear on the challenges you're facing today. You'll be amazed that, if nothing else, you'll feel better. And if you feel better, there's hope. And if you have hope, you can make changes.
So with that, if you have hope, you can make changes. We're going to go to another commercial. We'll come right back with Captain Donnie Big Time Cochran.
Here are 6 reasons why you should attend the Women of Color STEM Conference. 1. Meet experts and influencers. WOC attendees come from all rungs of the career ladder. While you won't necessarily meet your business idol, you will meet accomplished women who are experts in their field, one of whom might just be your next mentor. 2. Break out of your comfort zone. Sessions like the Woman to Woman, Up Close and Personal is one example of the type of event that will challenge you to look at your career in a whole new way. It is just the type of event you need to forge new ways of thinking. 3. Educational opportunities. WOC seminars and workshops offer new ideas and trends, exposure to different point of views, new ways to be more productive, opportunities to learn from others, and ways to improve skills and knowledge. 4. Networking with peers. WOC offers opportunities to mix and mingle and form new relationships. It is a valuable resource for best practices to uncover new ideas and spark inspiration when you get to know each other over coffee, lunch, or cocktails at a WOC event. 5. Position yourself as an expert. Frequent attendees to WOC are often asked to lead workshops at the conference. This goes a long way in establishing you as an expert in your field. You'll boost your reputation among your peers, clients, and employer. They'll feel good about their association with you. 6. Have fun. Enjoyment while managing career growth can be rewarding and fun. A little fun with interesting people can be very powerful.
All right. And for those of you who are just joining, I'm on with Captain Donnie Big Time Cochran, a real life maverick. He is Donnie, we talked about so many things. Let's get into aviation and flying jets, which is what I love to talk about most of all. So tell us about the aircraft that you flew and any sea story about flying either the F-14 or the F-18, whichever you prefer. Over to you.
All right. Well, I was very fortunate to fly fighter airplanes. And of course, it takes a certain amount of, any aviation for that matter, it takes a lot of courage, and the same qualities that it takes to fly a fighter jet are similar to what it takes to fly any jet, except you got to enhance your skills even more because it's such a dynamic environment. But I was fortunate to fly the RF-8 Crusader. It was a single piloted high performance reconnaissance airplane. I transitioned from there to the F-14, which was air superiority fighter jet in the 70s and 80s. And then I had an opportunity to fly the F-18 and the A-4 when I was flying as a Blue Angel pilot. Operationally, my experience was flying the F-14. And I like to share one story that I had, and this was flying the F-14 in the Northern Pacific. It was toward the end of a 8-month deployment, and we were tasked to go 150 miles away from the ship at night in freezing weather conditions in the Northern Pacific. Unfortunately for us, we had the weather was deteriorating so bad that they recalled the aircraft to come back to land on the ship. We were 600 miles from Misawa Air Force Base, which is in Japan, and Shimizu, which is on the Aleutian Islands, about halfway in between. So if we couldn't get back aboard the ship, we had to divert to one of those airfields. And for me, it was very challenging in the sense that, number one, this is the last flight we're going to fly before we go home after 8 months. So you really didn't want to be up there flying, particularly in this type of conditions. As we were returning the ship, the weather was deteriorating even worse. And so I had to come on board this particular night with the weather being, I think it was, the ceiling was about 200 feet and the visibility was a half a mile. And those are the minimum. It was probably below that.
Below minimum.
Go ahead.
So for those of you in the audience, when he's talking about ceilings and visibility, when you start talking about ceilings under 200 feet, you got to think that the aircraft carrier alone is, over 100 feet off the water. So when the ceiling is 200 feet, it's not 200 feet from the aircraft carrier, it's 200 feet from the water. So you're basically going to take an airplane, fly it down, and as soon as you come out of the clouds, just
and that's exactly what happened. At 3/4 of a mile, they call for you to call the ball, and that's you see the ship. We could not see the ship, and by the time we broke out, I said over the radio's ball, and we touched down. And the good news was we caught a wire. And my legs were shaking so bad it was difficult to taxi out of the landing area because somebody else was coming behind us. So we landed, and you say your little prayers after you land. Oh, thank goodness I landed on that landing, because as you make your second approach, your performance deteriorate the more times you have to do it. So we landed, and for fighter pilots, every landing is graded. So as I'm walking back to the ready room, the thought came to my head, wonder what my grade was. Now, a few seconds ago, I was praying that I would land. Now, all of a sudden, I'm concerned about a grade. So, but that was not the scariest flight for me. The scariest flight for me was the next night. And we were on an alert, and they called for launching alerts. And I had just landed the night before, and I did not have the desire to go back out there, particularly since we were headed home. And they got the airplane on the catapult, and they were getting ready to launch, and they canceled the launch. The threat of having to go back in there was like, I go through the process. The way you work on the ship was when you knew you had to go fly, you had to generate the energy. You didn't have it, you had to generate that energy so that when you got in that environment, you could be successful, because it is so unforgiving for mistake or lack of focus.
Donnie, you said something really powerful. You said generate energy. How do people who are furloughed and sitting at home, depressed, worried about being reduction in force, worried about getting sent away, tell me, how do you generate energy?
Okay.
How to do it?
Well, first of all, there are a number of ways you can do that. One thing that I do routinely, even today, I would go online and I will listen to, on YouTube, I listen to Napoleon Hill motivation. I listen to
Matt Bowman.
Yeah, there you go. I listen to Les Brown. I listen to John Maxwell. I listen to those folks that provide those positive energy necessary for you to generate. A power plant doesn't have power. It must transform and generate power. You don't have motivation. You have to transform that knowledge you have to generate that motivation, to generate that inspiration. If you're sitting around moping, that's not going to do it. You have to have. By the way, here's a good lead in. Thanks, Matt, for asking me. This is my book here. It is Glad to Be Here. Glad to Be Here was a comment that was used by the Blue Angels. And I usually lead into it with this statement. And it's from Maya Angelou. And it says, when you know better, you do better. The challenge is that's easier said than done, because many situations we find ourselves in, we do know better, but we fail to do better. To do better on the Blue Angels, all the pilots and support officers that observe the air show will come in for a debrief, and each person will give an individual assessment on what went well and the opportunities for improving the air show. And at the end of your comments, you would say, glad to be here. And glad to be here was an expression of gratitude for the effort it took to get you where you are in your life and the commitment required to keep you there. So I always like to say, I'm glad to be here. Like when Matt asked me to be a part of this, I said, I'm glad to be here. Now, the question you need to ask yourself is, can you say you're glad to be where you are in your life right now or career? If the answer is yes, great. If it's no, ask yourself why and take action to make your situation better. Now, what's interesting about that phrase is this: you can assess any area of your life by asking the question. You can ask, hey, am I glad to be where I am in my finances? Am I glad to be where I'm in my health? How about my relationship? If you have self-awareness of who you are and the courage to take actions, you can make your situation better.
Wow. You know, that glad to be here, the Blue Angel phrase, those of you who are listening, take that, run with it. Glad to be here. We're going to go to another commercial. But Donnie, we're going to close out this segment with glad to be here.
Okay.
Hi, STEM professionals. I'm Eric Price, Vice President of Recruitment and Training here for Career Communications Group. Our conferences have something for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. Let's say, for example, you are a new college student, need some soft skills to learn. Guess what? We can help you there. If you're an existing professional who's looking to rise up the corporate ladder, we got you covered. Our remarkable thought leaders will introduce you to out-of-the-box thinking, develop your existing professional skills, and expand your leadership skills. My name is Eric Price, and I'm Vice President of Recruitment and Training here at Career Communications Group, and you can contact me either by calling our headquarters office at 410-244-7101 or via email at eprice@ccgmag.com. And I look forward to hearing from you soon.
All right, welcome back to the Briefing Room, a show by Warriors for Warriors. You know, Donnie, you in the last segment, you talked about glad to be here. And for those who might hear that phrase, they might think, oh, that's a really lovey-dovey environment. Can you talk to the audience about the importance of honest to goodness, raw briefings, performance, and debriefings? I mean, you mentioned grades, but can you give the audience a sense of, in a fighter community, how honest and how real are the debriefs so that you can have enhanced performance?
Okay. First of all, in order to go to a briefing, you had to do your homework. In other words, you have to spend the time necessary to prepare for your briefing. In other words, your skills, you have to enhance your skills. So when you show up for that briefing, you've reviewed your procedures. Now you're touching the high points, the highlights of your mission. You're not necessarily going into details because you did that before you did the briefing. You know the limitations of your airplane. You know the limitations of your weapon system if you're going out for a combat air patrol, for instance.
Is
Emergency fuel limitations, what type of route you're going to take. You review all of those details of your situation. Now that's a military, but for, let's say, for instance, if I'm preparing for work, one of the things that I did, I was a manager of aviation programs. So I was in charge of our flight attendants, of our dispatchers, the safety standards and training programs. So before I would go in to ensure that all of these programs are operating correctly, I had to do my homework, review what was going in each areas, making sure that I was aware of what the limitations are or what the issues were that we need to move forward on. And then I would have periodic meetings with each one of the leaders of those areas to make sure we were on track. And if we were not, then we would talk about the gaps and make sure that we were where we needed to be. So that when it was time to execute, we were ready. We knew what the limitations are so that we can still operate in the environment knowing what the limitations were. And at the end of the day, go ahead.
Briefings, were those briefings critiqued and graded by the people who are listening and the people who are participating? Is a briefing a judged event?
Well, you did not necessarily go in and evaluate the briefing, as in you had a checklist where you went down and made sure. Yeah, you had checklists for that, but in terms of evaluating performance, you would know whether that person was ready or not for that particular event by the briefing. And if of course you were not up to speed, you had an opportunity to intervene to say, okay, we need to thoroughly review this before we get in the airplane and go fly. And that way you would catch some of the issues that could be a problem in the air where you had less time to deal with it. And particularly if there were a compound issues that made it even more challenging. And of course, if you go and execute your mission, and then you come back and you have a what we call a debrief. In the debrief, you had what we call the goods and the others. And the goods were the things that went well, and the others were the opportunities for improving your performance. And that's the key.
Donnie, before we go to the debrief, on the briefing part, there's one part of the aviation brief that I think can really help people who are being furloughed or who are dealing with crisis. And that is, it doesn't matter whether it's a training flight or whether it's going to war, you always at every brief had to go through your emergency procedures.
Yes.
And I think in life, what do you think? I mean, in life, do people need to go through their emergency procedures each and every brief? Why do it each and every brief? Why not just do it one time?
Well, because number one, you may cover, there are like tons of emergencies that you can have. So each brief, you cover a different emergency to make sure that by the time the month is over, perhaps you covered half of the potential mistakes or emergencies that could occur during your flight. 99% of the time, there's not going to be a problem. But the one time that there is a problem and you reviewed that procedure, it'll be second nature for you to execute within the air, and it have minimum impact on your ability to get the job done. Even though you've had a major system failure, you're still able to accomplish your mission without any impact on the results that you were executing for. That's the beauty of making sure that you have checklists to review those critical areas of your life. And I have checklists today that I use for me. I've taken the things I learned at UPS and at Coca-Cola and in the Navy, Blues, my life journey, and I'm incorporating those things into my own life so that if it worked for me in that organization, perhaps some of those things will work for me in my personal life as well.
So if a furloughed worker wanted to reach out to you and learn more about how to leverage checklists, how to leverage human performance, how to do all those things. I know that you are in this space. You've taken your lessons from the Blue Angels and from the farm and from, going to war. you have a business. So talk to me a little bit about your business and what.
Yeah, Enhanced Performance Consulting is a high performance development organization. I focus a lot on leadership, team building, and individual performance and accountability. Those were the three pillars of what it was like to operate in the Blues. Those three areas. If you have great leadership and your ability to build a cohesive team, and the individual performance and accountability was the bottom line. Each person had to deliver high value at a high level and execute in order for the team to execute high performance air shows. And they're pillars of it. I always talk about, I call it the 5 C's of leadership and the 5 C's of teamwork, the 5 C's of individual performance, and the 5 C's of trust. I think they're interchangeable. And for instance, the 5 C's are character being the number one. Number 2 is competency. Number 3 is commitment. Number 4 is communications. And number 5 is courage. And there's an A. The A is accountability. And for each one of those pillars, there is it's outlined in my book, Glad to Be Here, by the way. And what I go into is as you're learning to execute flying an airplane 36 inches away from another airplane, we were asking each other a series of questions. And the questions were nonverbal, and you answered them through your performance. And the very first question that were being asked were about your character. And they were very simple questions. And it was, do you walk your talk? Do you do what you say you're going to do when you said you were going to do it? Not just when you were in the aircraft, but when you were outside the aircraft and no one was watching. Do you honor yourself with your word? And that's part of it too. And another part of it is this. As you're going through your life journey and focus on your character, you're going to be faced with difficult and tough conversations. Now you are faced a different question. And that is, do you choose comfort over character? And why that is important, because sometimes you have to have tough and difficult conversations in order to determine where you are in your life. Don't be afraid to do that, because it may reveal your need to take stronger actions in order to get where you need to be. And the same applies to your competency. In communication, for instance, one of the things I always say is, sometimes when you're dealing with a team, a lot of people say, well, we need more communication. Well, sometimes you don't need more communications. You need wise communications. And wise communication is occurred through your life experiences that teach you sometimes it may be wise not to say anything. Or it may be wise to speak up at the appropriate time. That's what wisdom is all about. And the last pillar that I'll cover, and that's the courage one. And in courage, what was interesting there was, in order to grow, I got to tell you, I had to face those painful issues, conquer my fears, all of those things. Sometimes you must stand firm on your shaky legs. And that's what I had to do. Just like landing on that ship, and I was taxiing out of the run. My legs were shaking. I just did a really dynamic landing, but yet my legs are shaking. Sometimes you're going to have that situation. You're going to have to stand firm on your shaky legs, and it takes courage to do that.
Well, Donnie, I want to thank you for being on this show. It's not often, we have a living legend here, a Blue Angel pilot, flying, 700 miles an hour, 3 feet, wingtip to wingtip, leading men and women through the air, representing the world's greatest Navy. I want to thank you, sir, for those words of wisdom. We are going to close out this segment for all the furloughed workers. In the words of Captain Donnie Big Time Cochran, sometimes you got to stand firm on your shaky legs. We're going to go to a commercial.
Welcome to WALK TV, your connection to the Waves of Change STEM conference. From inspiring interviews and cutting-edge seminars to career achievements and recognition, WALK TV covers it all. Watch live on the WALK DTX platform and STEM City USA during the conference and all year long. WALK TV, live, direct, and made for you.
All right. Standing firm on shaky legs. Those words will be the takeaway for all of those furloughed workers. If you have a question and you've been furloughed from any federal agency, I want you to come in the chat, ask your question now so that we can use these last 8 minutes to answer questions from any furloughed workers. All right, and so we have our first question from the audience, and this question says, tell us more about this Waves of Change conference. So the Waves of Change conference is a conference where in our 21st year is a conference held in Baltimore, Maryland. You can go to BEYA.org and find out more information. There is job opportunities. There are networking opportunities, and there's an opportunity for you to brand yourself as an expert in your field. The good news for those of you who have been in the federal government is that if your talents, and this is from one of my mentors, if your talents are so good and your experiences are so good, this time of furlough, this time of RIF, this time of DRP is an opportunity for you to either do two things. One, invest in yourself and start your own business, like Captain Cochran and many of the others on this podcast. Or two, take your talents, pack up your stuff, and go across the street. There is opportunity in the private sector. That is what going across the street is. Tony Watson once time told me, he said, Matt, never be afraid to go across the street. He was raised in Chicago. And in the inner city of Chicago, he told me, he said, Matt, when there's danger ahead of you, sometimes the smart thing to do is to cross the street. So for all of our furloughed employees out there who are looking for opportunities in the private sector, I encourage you to cross the street. There comes a time in every cowboy's life where he or she has to hang up their spurs, and your time in the federal government might be complete. And now it's time for you to either bet on yourself and start a company. If you want to start a company, you can come to Waves of Change. We have classes in entrepreneurship, classes in artificial intelligence. It is a workforce development opportunity for you to go to your next adventure. Then you may say, well, I don't want to start my own business. I have bills, I have children. I just don't have that spirit. Then cross the street, go to corporate America, go to a nonprofit entity. All of those organizations are looking for people with your talent, whether it's in administration, logistics, operations. You are fully qualified, and you need to believe in yourself. The next thing is education. Artificial intelligence is going to make a lot of these jobs, even if you do go back to work for the federal agency, it's going to make a lot of those jobs obsolete. So now is the time to embrace the change. The Navy SEALs call it embracing the suck. You have to embrace that this might be the new normal. And so if this is the new normal for you, I want you to succeed. Let's see if there's any more questions from the chat. Okay, let's talk about BEYA. BEYA is a conference that happens every February. It's called Becoming Everything You Are. It's February 13 through 16 in Baltimore, Maryland at the Baltimore Convention Center. We'll have over 12,000 job seekers, working professionals, companies, corporate America, big tech, Fortune 500. That is another place for you to go. We have a job match program. So if you send me your resume, we can post your resume on the job match. And there's companies that are looking for people with your talent. So in February, you have Waves of Change. In October, you have Waves of Change. In February, you have Becoming Everything You Are. Those are two opportunities in the next 6 months for you to change your life. If you're a college student, I want to encourage you to join us at BEYA Stars and Stripes for our career day. for our Pathways initiatives. We have a pathway for you or your children or your collegians who you work with every day to get world-class opportunities. The class of 2025 is entering one of the most uncertain job markets in history. You're competing against your parents, you're competing against your grandparents for opportunities. Now may be the time for you to use your information that you know about technology to start your own company. Entrepreneurship is the pathway. I have a mentor, Vice Admiral Walt Davis, who says this all the time. Everyone's looking for a job, but they need to be looking for their next opportunity. And that opportunity, more than likely, is in entrepreneurship and ownership. So those are the two questions. I want to thank you all for participating in today's briefing room. We've gone around the world. We've got the news. We've been inspired by Captain Donnie Big Time Cochran. So you got it straight from the words of one of America's greatest fighter pilots. And with that, we are going to close with one last word from our sponsors. We'll see you next week.
Sometimes we don't even know what we don't know. And we don't know who we can talk to. But it's organizations like this where you can have those conversations so that you don't feel isolated. What do I need to know to get there? Okay, I went to college, I got the degree, I got a master's or I got a PhD. How do you make certain that you know what you're supposed to do and how to navigate a corporation within? That's huge. That's huge. Sometimes we don't have a family member in our circle. Sometimes it's somebody that we knew 5 years ago who can bring some information to the table. We have to be able to dial a number with people that we know understand what we may or may not be going through or what we need. So if you're getting a PhD, but you didn't know that you also needed to do something else or not, who's there to be able to talk to you and help you navigate your career? People who've already had that experience that you can just call up and say, I just had this experience and it didn't feel good. And somebody's there to talk you through it. Life isn't always easy in corporate America, but you've got to build your circle.
This year, the tide is stronger than ever. For 30 years, we've been creating space for growth, innovation, and global competitiveness in STEM. From students and early career professionals to senior leaders and executives, this is where STEM changemakers gather. Join us in Baltimore for the 30th anniversary of the Waves of Change STEM Global Competitiveness Conference. 3 days of learning, networking, and shaping the future. October 23rd through the 25th, Baltimore, Maryland. Mark your calendar. Waves of Change, Oceans of Opportunity. More information at ccgmag.com/WOC.